When you use cameras in real life, having things in focus is important, and focus can be used overall to highlight certain objects in the frame. Maya also has a way to create camera focus effects, and that's called depth of field. So let's take a look at how this works. I have a simple image set up with the camera, and let's go ahead and look at the camera attribute editor. So I'm going to go into View, Camera Attributes. And then all we have to do is scroll down, and we should have a depth of field rollout. Now, if I have Viewport 2.0 turned on, I can click depth of field, and I should see an effect in my viewport. Now, this isn't exactly what I want because everything seems to be out of focus. So let's put some stuff in focus. Well, the most important value in this rollout is the focus distance. This is the actual physical distance that the camera is focusing. Right now, it's set at 5, and this isn't working. So what I want to do is focus on an object in the scene. The only problem with this is that I don't know the physical distance to any particular object. Well, that can be solved by using what's called a heads-up display. So if we go into our display menu, you'll see that we have a number of different heads-up displays. And the one I'm looking for is called Object Details. And when I select that, you can see that when I click on an object, it gives me the details of that object. And the one I'm looking for is distance from camera. So if I click on this car, I notice that the distance from the camera is 41 units and change. So I can go into my attribute editor for my camera, and I can type in that number. So let's go ahead and type in 41. And when I do, notice how the focus changes. So once we have the focus distance set, we can move on to the next value, which is f-stop. Now, f-stop works exactly the same way that it works in real-world cameras. The higher the f-stop, the more stuff is in focus. The lower the f-stop, the blurrier the frame. So if I dial this up, everything goes in focus. If I bring it down, everything goes out of focus. And I can type in whatever number I want. I'm going to type in 2. And then finally, we have something called Focus Region Scale. And all this does is act as a multiplier. So if we put in a bigger number, more things will be in focus. A smaller number will mean less things are in focus. I'm going to keep this at 1. So now we can render this with Mental Ray, and I'll go ahead and do that right now. So as you can see, the car renders in focus, and the house is out of focus, as well as the bush, but also notice how the shadow gradually goes into focus. So the focus effect is fairly accurate. And one of the nice things about it is that we can focus on any object we want in the scene. We can also animate that to create rack focus effects. Now, in addition to this method for creating depth of field, Maya has another way which works only with Mental Ray. So I'm going to go back into my camera attribute editor, and I'm going to turn off depth of field. And now I'm going to scroll down, and we're going to do something a little bit different. Now, I still have my camera selected, so now I'm going to scroll down and find the Mental Ray rollout. And in here, we'll see what are called shaders. Now, these are normally used to put color and texture on our objects, but we can also use them to modify our camera. So I'm going to find the one that says Lens Shader, and I'm going to open that up. I'm going to create a render node. And our Create Render Node menu comes up just as normal. So I'm going to go through this Mental Ray tab until I find the one that says Lenses. And when I click on that, several different lenses show up. And these are basically just lenses for our camera. So I'm going to select the one that says MIA Lens Bokeh, B-O-K-E-H, and put that on my camera. And when I do, it brings me into that node. So what it does is it allows me to set a plane. So this first number is the same as our distance from camera. I'm going to go ahead and put that number 41 in there. The next one is radius. So this controls the blurring. The bigger the number here, the more blurring you get. So smaller numbers equal less blurring. Samples just indicate the quality of the effect. So a higher number of samples will create a higher quality effect. I'm going to put this at 8. And then we have a bias control, which will amplify or diminish the effect. And then we also have what's called blade count and blade angle, which allow you to input specifically the number of blades in your camera's aperture as well as the angle of those blades. So that's a really kind of a neat way to simulate very specific cameras. So I'm going to pretty much leave this at defaults except for pumping up the number of samples. And let's go ahead and just hit render. So there's our render. Now this looks a little bit different than the other depth of field render, and so both have their advantages. I think the lens shader actually has more control, and if you play with it, you can certainly get some interesting effects.